Rana Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 97 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. And today is going to be a solo episode. So yes, you will be hearing from yours truly for the entirety of this episode. And I wanted to do a solo round just because I haven't done one since episode 81 and 82. And these are always a great way for you guys to hear from me. I know that sometimes people will send me questions and say, hey, Raina, can you talk about this topic? Can you tell us a little bit more about your own life and your own journey? So I want to start doing more solo episodes just so that you guys can get a better sense of who your host is and some of the things that I'm experiencing as well. Because as I say, throughout the previous episodes is Dreams and Drive has really been putting my own dreams in drive, literally. And I think sometimes I hide behind the guest, or not even hide. I think sometimes I'm so comfortable having other people tell their stories that I sometimes forget that I have my own gems and my own nuggets of information that I can also share with you guys as well. So on this episode, I'm going to say 3 specific things that I want to talk about. So this episode is going to be titled How to Push Past Overwhelm and Stay Focused. And that's just a topic that I wanted to talk about because it's just something I have been experiencing with the podcast. You guys probably feel this way as well. Just like, how do you get past those feelings of, wanting to give up on the vision or on the brand or whatever it is that you're building. So I definitely want to talk about those topics. And then how do you push past those feelings and just continue to stay focused? But I also want to do a quick update, and I have a short rant that I want to go on. I originally was going to post this rant on YouTube because, I was just so passionate about it yesterday, and I said, you know what, I'm about to make a video, I'm about to premiere the Dreams and Drive vlog, but I didn't, and I'm happy I didn't because I think I'll be able to articulate my feelings a lot better right now. But before we get into the episode, as always, please make sure that you are subscribed to us on social. We are Dreams and Drive on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So all you have to do is go on there if you haven't already and just add us. And if you are going to talk about this episode, which I really hope that you do, please use the hashtag Dreams and Drive. And if you use the hashtag, I'm able to go in and search and see what people are saying, or you can just tag us as well. I also encourage you to subscribe to the channel wherever you're listening, whether that be Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, Google Play. Hit the subscribe button so that you are notified every time we have, a new episode. All right, so what is this rant that I want to go on? So, I'm going out of town and I need to get my hair braided, or I needed to get my hair braided. And I follow a lot of creatives on Instagram, and a lot of those people are also hairstylists, specifically hair braiders. I have been so frustrated with the ability to book hairstylists via the internet. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because I think sometimes as creatives and as lifestyle entrepreneurs, people who order services, especially to people, you need to make sure that it is very easy for your customers to book an appointment for you. And not only because it just makes sense that this should be an easy process, but because you are losing out on a lot of money. Within the past 24 hours, I have reached out to like 5 different people on Instagram via their messaging, via whatever, and it has been so difficult to get a response. People are like, I'm not available at this time. I have to say, what are your rates? What are you charging for this? Some people just don't even respond at all. And I think that a lot of people out here who are side hustling on Instagram, whether you are a professional hairstylist or whether you are just doing this on the side, you are losing out on a lot of potential business, because the moment you didn't answer me that first time was the moment I went and found somebody else. And if you had systems in place that really allowed you to capitalize on people's interests, then you could be making a lot more money. So what I really want to say is that I think a lot of people who offer services online, whether you're a photographer, whether you're a hairstylist, a makeup artist, you do lashes, whatever, you need to make sure that you have booking systems in place. And this also goes for people who offer consultations, coaching calls, whatever. Your clients should be able to book you automatically. This is 2017. I think that whole email me, text me, message me, wait for me to respond, and then we can figure out a time. That's just a lot of time wasted when there are a lot of different systems you could invest in. And I say invest because it takes money to make money. And if you really want to scale, then you should really be thinking about ways that you can really leverage systems in order to do this. So one of the things, I'll just talk about my podcast. So for my podcast booking is when someone tells me that they are interested in being on the podcast after they accept my pitch or whatever, I do not waste time with saying, all right, here's a date that I'm available. Does this time work for you? I send people a link to my Calendly page where they can see my calendar and they can schedule a time. And when they schedule a time for the interview, they then can add, the interview to their calendar. Calendly sends them a reminder a day before the interview. All that good stuff is automated. People will pay for convenience, but people will also remember if you were not convenient and choose not to pay you. So for example, if you are the best hair braider in all of North America, right? And I'm trying to reach out to you because you can do my hair after work, because I'm a 9-to-5er too, right? I have a day job. I can't always just call out for a day to get my hair braided. So if you're going to be convenient and offer services to me when you're off work, I'm going to be attracted to your service, right? But if when I then reach out, I can get in contact with you and, it takes 48 hours to book something that I need the next day, I am not going to be inclined to want to use your services. And I may go to somebody who is not as good as a braider, but is more convenient and who is a good customer service. So I think a lot of people just need to think about that. This is just a very short rant. If you don't care about this, you could skip along, but I think it's just something that you need to consider when you're building out your business, whatever it is. It's how is the customer experiencing you? How is your customer interacting with you? How can you make sure you're being efficient and you're providing the customer what they need, the information they need in as little clicks? And I say clicks is I shouldn't have to click here, then click here, then click here in order to come and make a decision about interfacing with you, right? So if you're posting a picture of a style online, your caption should have everything I need to know. It should tell me what the style name is, how much it costs, and how do I go about booking this with you, right? A lot of people that I've seen, even just in this short week of just trying to find someone to do my hair, they'll post all these pretty pictures, but the captions won't have anything, right? That's not good for business because you are leaving your customer with too many questions. When people have questions, you know what they do? They go somewhere else. All right, but that's enough about that because I could talk about that for a long time, but I just really want to start with that because I think as creatives, we just need to really start thinking about that experience, that customer experience, and what kind of systems do we need to be investing in. And if you're a hairstylist especially, I will say that StyleSeat is something that you could look into. They are official sponsor of Dreams and Drive. Their episodes haven't dropped yet, but that's a CRM system, customer management system, or customer relationship management system that you can invest in. If you're a photographer, you could use something such as Acuity scheduling and then link that to your PayPal so that people can drop deposits when they're booking things. Just think about ways that you can automate, and you want to make sure you have ways to collect your money beforehand if possible, because I had an experience with someone that I knew that was booked to do an event and the person canceled 3 hours before the event, but they hadn't had any contract in place. They hadn't had a deposit in place. So they really did lose out, and you don't want to be that person. So the 100th episode is coming up rather quickly, and I'm a bit disappointed in myself. I think I was hyping it up a few weeks back about how I wanted to do something special for the 100th episode, and time just got away from me. I said, I'm going to do a live event, do a live meetup, and it just can't happen unless I'm able to pull something off in 2 weeks. I just don't think it's going to be possible. I'm a bit disappointed because I did set that goal of having some type of celebration for the 100th episode. But at the same time, I had to tell myself, I can create my own anniversaries. I can make the 104th episode a celebration, right? I think sometimes when we face discouraging times, we want to give up, but we're not open to rethinking how we can make it into a win. I feel like I made myself think that I had to do something big for the 100th episode because it's some kind of landmark. But honestly, I could create my own anniversaries as I was saying before. And if you don't meet your goal, we can make a new goal. So I'm not going to say it out loud what it is that I'm planning on doing until I'm a bit closer to it. So this episode, all right, so let's actually get into the episode just because I said this wasn't going to be a long episode, and here I am rambling on and on. So this episode, I really want to focus on the idea of how to push past overwhelm and stay focused. And I think that the feeling of overwhelm can be described by people in different ways. And for me, overwhelm is just that feeling of like wanting to give up, feeling of, being anxious about the future, the feeling of just feeling like everything is crashing down and nothing is going the way that you want it, not being able to see the light. You can't see the light. What do you do when you can't see the light? And I was actually experiencing this, I want to say, a few weeks ago. I was just in this funk. Like everything about Dreams and Drive was annoying me. I convinced myself that I hated interviewing. I convinced myself that this was just like, why am I doing it? I had one of those moments where you're like looking at yourself outside of yourself. So picture like, how in the movies where they show, let's say someone dies and they show like the ghost coming out from the body and being able to see everything. That's how I kind of felt. I'm just here looking at myself and I had to ask myself, why? Like, what are you doing this for? And I was just really in a funk, and I had to really think about what was causing it. In preparing for this episode, I took down some notes on some things that I think that you can do if you're in a similar situation, and I will infuse this with how I was able to get out of this funk, this feeling of overwhelmed, and get focused on the goal again. So number one was, you need to take the time to identify what is the cause of the overwhelm. Now, some of you ladies listening in, right, are going to laugh at me when I tell you this, how I was able to identify it. And you might not think it's worth me talking about, but I do think it is very worthwhile. And I do think it's going to make a lot of sense. Is for me, right? I was thinking about the 100th episode. I was thinking about what's next. I was thinking about I think I was fearful. I think I was lacking confidence in my ability to really build something. The podcast has grown tremendously over the past few months. I'm so grateful for all the opportunities that I've had because of it. But sometimes when you're in the midst of building something, you're not really able to see just how much you actually have built. So I had to take the time to identify what was my overwhelm. And I think one of the main reasons was I was not really aware of what it was that I was doing. I had just been on autopilot, interviewing people all the time, putting up the interviews, just sticking to this routine that everything was becoming a blur. I felt like a machine, and I had to really refocus on my why. And also this is the part where I say you guys are going to laugh at me. I had to put this on a calendar, and I realized that these feelings of overwhelm were coming to me during a certain part of the month every month, kind of for the past few months or whatever. I don't know if my body's just going through changes, but I realized that the week before my menstrual cycle, I was just feeling these feelings and allowing them to actually take over me. And as any woman who has gone through, her menstrual cycle, your body changes during this part of the month. So I wasn't really aware of that. I wasn't even thinking, this could be just hormones in my body. This may not be how I really think about this situation. So once I put it on the calendar and I was able to then define my feelings a lot better. And not saying that I was making an excuse for these feelings, but I just said, all right, these feelings are probably being heightened because of the part of the month that it is, which is very real for a lot of women. So I'm just going to say it, right? So identifying it, fear, and all those other things, coupled with it being the wrong time of the month for me to feel these things, I just felt like giving up. But number 2 is you have to then find a way to release. And for me, releasing meant I had to back away from doing interviews. So for the month of July, I only really interviewed, I want to say one person. I think that was Ursula Stephen. I only interviewed one person this month, and it felt so good. I think I needed that time of rest. I needed that time to just explore other things, read some books, just work out, do something different, because a lot of times when you're building things, you don't give yourself that time to just release and to just free your mind. And one of the important things I think with following this whole process is realizing that you are not alone, right? That sometimes when you are feeling overwhelmed, you may think that you are the only person in the entire world who has ever felt like this, and you can get very egocentric in some ways. And by taking a step back and realizing that this is something that other people have experienced as well, and this is something that other people have gotten through and you can get through it as well, is something that I think will be very motivating to you as you are pushing yourself and pushing past these feelings. The third thing that I want to say is that you need some type of accountability partners. You need some type of support system. For me, one of the things that was really reaffirming to me when I was feeling like giving up was my mastermind group. So as I mentioned, I think one of some episodes prior, is I am still part of a 6-month mastermind with Sophia Satterwhite, and there's 2 other women in the group as well, Heidi Walt and Megan Adarale. And talking to those women every 2 weeks for an hour and a half is really reaffirming, because you need people who are going to hold you accountable to things that you set for yourself, even when you cannot hold yourself accountable any longer. Even when parts of your life make you feel like, you just feel like giving up. You need other people to be your rocks. You need other people to be your trees. You need other people to be your support system, your crutch, not even crutch, your wheelchair. If you feel like falling down, they'll be the people who say, all right, girl, you could fall down, put you in a wheelchair. I'll get you to the door. When we get to the door, you're going to have to walk through the door yourself. And I think the accountability partners are really important. But how do you find accountability partners? I mean, you could pay for it via a mastermind group. You can seek them out. Maybe there's somebody on Twitter that you're always talking to who has like-minded goals, who has the same type of mindset as you. You could always reach out to that person and say, hey, do you want to do a quick phone call every Friday, and we just check in with each other on our goals? And I think by doing that, right, knowing that you have to report back to somebody every week and being consistent on that will help you have something to focus on. I'm going to talk about focus a little bit later, but I think that it's one of those mind tricks you'll play. It's like, when you have a meeting, then before the meeting, your boss will say, okay, here are the to-dos. We're going to talk about these to-dos. You don't want to go into that meeting looking crazy. So you make sure you get those to-dos done. You may do them the day before, but whatever, they get done. And I think that's the same concept with having accountability partners. Is you need someone who can inspire you, can motivate you, but also hold you accountable for what it is that you'll say you'll do. And I think one of the last tips that I have for how to push past overwhelm is remembering what's your biggest why. Most of the guests that have been on the show, and if you don't believe me, go back and listen to some prior episodes, most of the biggest guests talk about how understanding your why is what's going to keep you going when you feel like giving up. At the end of every episode, I like to ask that question, because for certain people, it's different things. Certain people are motivated by different things, and understanding what's motivating you, what's keeping you going, is going to be crucial. So you have to ask yourself, how bad do you want it? How bad do you really want it? A lot of us say something like, I want to be the best painter in the world, right? You say that, but do you really, really have that burning desire? And that's something that I get from Napoleon Hill in his book, Think and Grow Rich. But do you have that burning desire to truly be the best painter in the world? Because if you do, all your energy will be focused towards that. So maybe sometimes if you're feeling overwhelmed, you need to step back and really ask yourself, is the goal that I'm working on what I really want to be working on? Because if overwhelm is coming to you every day, months on months, you may not be aligned with your purpose. And I think that's something that is very important. Some of us can get going in something and we'll see progress. It'll be going well. Other people will be giving us affirmations. But if in your heart you don't really want it, you're never going to be fully fulfilled. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I really do mean that. And that connects with the next thing, which is, how bad do you need the change? How bad do you need the change from whatever it is that you're doing, what that will bring, right? So let's say I'm going to go back to this hairstylist, right? Let's say I want to be the best hairstylist in the world, because by being the best hairstylist in the world, I will then be able to move out of the hood, buy my mother a house, go on vacation. And by doing that, my whole way of living will change. You got to ask yourself, how bad do you really want that change? And how bad do you really need that change? Because some of us may want something, but we may not really need it. And there's a difference between the two. And I'm not going to tell you what that difference is, because I think for a lot of us, we know what that difference is, but we're just scared to really acknowledge it. There's a difference between wanting something and needing it. And I think once you figure out why you need it, and once you align that with your purpose and really figure out what your burning desire is, being able to push past that overwhelm because you'll have something to focus on will be a lot easier. So here we are on the topic of staying focused. Now, as a dream driver, your journey is not going to be linear. There are going to be times where you're driving through ditches. There are going to be times where you are having the time of your life with the convertible. There'll be times where you're in a Jeep and you're going through rugged terrain. There'll be times when you're in a sports car, living the life, right? But at the same time, you always want to make sure that no matter what the journey is looking like, you are driving towards a goal. So number one in staying focused is, you have to ask yourself, what is it that I'm actually doing? What's the plan? What's the goal? And a lot of us sometimes just start and we never actually think about what it is that we're trying to build. And I know on a previous episode, I think it was with the one with Ayana Iman, episode 92, we talked about just do the work and the plan will come, which I definitely agree with. But at the same time, I think a lot of us, we do kind of at least need to have some type of some end destination in sight. And you may get there, you may keep going, but knowing what you're driving to is truly important. So once you're able to define it, that's going to be the first step in being able to stay focused. I think the next step, and a lot of people will say this all the time, and I may be a repeat cause or whatever, but really affirming it to yourself and then writing it down on a physical something. I'm really big on writing things out. So for me, I will get like an index card. I actually have one. It's not near to my desk right now, so I don't want to rumble through and try to find it. But I have like my 3 goals for the year written out. And I read it. I try to read it at least daily or think about it daily. You can put it on your phone, but definitely like write it out and affirm it to yourself and put it somewhere that it's always going to be a reminder to yourself of what the plan is that you're going towards. And I think number 3 would then be, you need reminders of your progress. In order to stay focused, I think it's very important to understand and to be aware of how far you have come. A lot of times people get discouraged when they don't see growth, but I think a lot of times we forget our own growth. I think sometimes we think that we always started at the stages at which we are right now. Like with this podcast, right? I wasn't always getting 20,000 plus downloads a month. There were times where I barely got 100 downloads an episode. an episode, right? So you can only imagine how much my total monthly downloads were. So just knowing that barely 19 months ago, I was barely getting 100 downloads and episodes, and being able to physically see that. So, I can log into the stats or my hosting platform and look at those dates and see that, wait, I grew. And I think just seeing the progress is something that will help to keep you focused, because you're always going to be reminded that you came from somewhere, but where you are right now is only the starting point to where you'll be in the future. Where you are right now is only the starting point to where you will be in the future, right? So keep reminders of progress all the time. It's kind of like people who work out or who are on a health journey where they'll have their before and after picture. Have a before and after when it comes to your brand. Have that thing that you are constantly looking at to remind you. And I trust me, that will help you stay focused. And I think something else that will help you stay focused is knowing yourself. You have to understand, how do you work best? How do you stay focused? I think I mentioned this on someone's episode or someone's podcast. Maybe it was the episode I did with Greg E. Hill on his podcast, where I talked about when I was in college, one of my sacrifices, just so that, one of my goals was to graduate with good grades, and I did not work well in big study hall groups. Rana just does not work well concentrating and focusing when other people are in the room, when there's too many people. So I would get invited to study hall sessions because I was part of a dance company, and they would book rooms for us to have study halls. And I just would never go until I finished my work. And maybe that wasn't fair to other people who were there trying to do their work, but I just knew that my optimal focus time was not going to be there. I knew my optimal focus time was in the morning when I just woke up. So I used to get a lot of work done in the morning that way. And it was just something that I had to be true to myself. I had to be real with myself and just know that, all right, Rana, this is what's going to work for you. It may not work for Susie. It may not work for Johnny, but it works for you. So keep doing what works for you. Something else that I want to talk about is the idea of watching your circle and watch what you're feeding yourself. I really think it's important to have people around you that are nourishing and encouraging to you, and to really rid yourself of the people that are weighing you down. And I think I talked about this in one of the early episodes, how to catch the dream killers in your life. And there are some people who you love, who may love you. And maybe this can be your parents, right? They may love you, but your parents may not be the people that you tell your dream to. Your parents may not be the most encouraging if they don't understand the dream, right? So really understanding who's going to be part of your circle along your dream driving journey, and who you can really trust to be part of your accountability circle. But at the same time, you also need to watch what you're feeding yourself. How are you inputting knowledge into yourself every day? Like, what are you physically feeding yourself? Because I think health is wealth, especially when it comes to, like, are you eating right? Are you making sure your levels in your body are balanced? Good food will also help your brain and help you function properly. But at the same time, like, what type of TV shows are you watching? What types of books are you reading? What type of music are you listening to? All those other things really influence how your brain works, really influences your subconscious. So you definitely want to be aware of that, because there could be things that, let's say you're listening to music-wise, that are making you not focused, or there may be things in your life that you are letting in that are detracting from your focus and your purpose. So you need to be aware of that. One of the other things that really helps me stay focused is developing rituals and patterns. So if you want to be a podcaster, right? Like for me, something that was really important was having someone to interview every week, right? I had to make sure in the beginning that I was interviewing somebody once a week. That was my pattern. People knew that Tuesdays and Wednesdays was my podcast days, because I had to get into the habit. You have to build habits in order to stay focused. And I think sometimes we think that we can just make ourselves focus, but sometimes focus is something that we have to practice, and it's a part of a discipline. It's part of being disciplined. So if you want to get focused, you have to develop some rituals and some consistent behavior that you can then associate with being focused. So for me, it was like podcast time, Tuesday, I'm focused. Here's the goal. Here's the end set. And that was something that once I was completed with it, right, I could check it off. And when you check things off, it's like this little light bulb of satisfaction that kind of fuels the next plan that you're trying to attack. So yes, it's kind of like tricking yourself a lot of ways. Like staying focused is tricking yourself into always thinking that there is forward progression and that you're working towards something, that the car hasn't been shut off. And then once again, I know I talked about this when we were talking about pushing past overwhelm, but even with staying focused is you have to remind yourself of your bigger why. What is it that you're working towards? What is it that people are affirming you about? And this is my favorite thing. When you guys send me love, I screenshot it because sometimes there are days when I just need some encouragement and I'll go through my phone, through my screenshots album, and I'll read, a comment that someone wrote. Let me actually go there now and I could show you guys what I mean. So I'm going on my iPhone to my screenshots album. Daughter podcast. I had responded to a tweet where someone recommended me on her podcast. And I was like, I have to go check out and listen to an episode of Daughter podcast. And the person responded and said, when someone you admire wants to listen to your stuff, and put a heart and a smiley face. And that was affirming to me because here it was, I just heard of her podcast and she was somebody who had always listened to mine and was so inspired that I even responded back. And there's just so many things like that I screenshot daily. Even today, I was talking to one of our previous guests, Lana Boone, and she was just telling me about how she really loves my podcast and they're very good and to just keep on going. And I was telling her about how I was trying to book somebody and how that went through. And she said, you know what? Don't worry, because that person doesn't know one day you'll be the next Barbara Walters. And that was just kind of like this encouragement, this thing that was just like, I really want this and I really need it because it's aligned with my purpose. And I'm tired of, not saying I don't love my 9 to 5, but I think that we all kind of want to feel like we are walking in doing something bigger than ourselves. And this podcast really does give me a way of fulfilling that need in my life and saving what you guys say about the podcast is truly special to me because there are times, honestly, when it can get hard. There are times when, podcasting can be rather lonely. I don't have a co-host. When I'm interviewing my guests, it's normally through Skype. I'm not talking to them. So the whole production process can be a bit lonely. The whole promotional process can be a little bit lonely. So it's just like, I'm not gonna get emotional, y'all, but I'm just really do appreciate from the heart all the love you guys show the podcast. I really do appreciate it. There is nothing that can compare to someone telling me that a podcast has helped them in some sort of way. I really do feel like it's part of my calling to have this. So thank you for being a part of my journey. This week, I may be a little bit quiet on social just because I'm not going to be around in town, but I'm also trying to do a little bit of an experiment to see what happens when I don't promote the podcast as much. So if you love this episode, if you really felt like this episode was worthwhile, if you didn't think I was rambling too much, share this with a friend. Help me promote this podcast because I really won't be able to. You can screenshot it and then post it as an Instagram story. You can share the link on Facebook, on Twitter. You can tell a friend to check it out. You can write about it if you're a writer. You can tell someone to write about it if you know some writers. You can link to your favorite episodes, all that good stuff. Please, please, please help me share this podcast. If you're not following us already, make sure to check out our social media pages. We are Dreams and Drive on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And make sure to use the hashtag Dreams and Drive when talking about the show so that I can go in and re-engage with you guys and I can retweet and do all that good stuff. I also just want to make notice of there were some things that some of the Dream Drivers recommended that I talk about in this episode, but I am going to save that stuff for the 100th episode. So if you have any listener questions that you want me to answer, please, please, please feel free to email me, send me a message, or tweet me. But you can also interact with me and the other Dream Drivers by joining the Dreams and Drive Facebook group. It's popping in the Facebook group, so you definitely want to make sure you're a part of it. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/Facebook, or if you're on Facebook, you can just search Dream Driver Mastermind and our group will pop up and you can request access there. Episode 98 will be with Jay Morrison, real estate entrepreneur extraordinaire. He shares a lot of good stuff. And that episode is going to be called From the Street Corner to the Corner Office, Building a Real Estate Empire and Wealth. He talks about a lot of great stuff, and I just think you guys will be intrigued by his story, so stay tuned for that. All right, so keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 98.